Our presentation is the evolving product management function. And our presenter, Jeff Lash, right next to me, is VP and Group Director of Product Management Research at Forrester. He and his team help product management leaders create world-class organizations and elevate the abilities and expertise of their teams to drive measurable and repeatable product success and business growth. He has over 20 years of experience in product management, product marketing, user experience, and product development. And since 2006, Jeff has authored the popular blog, How to Be a Good Manager, which is goodproductmanager.com. So I'd love to turn it over to Jeff and remind all of you that there's the chat window. So feel free to use that as we go along. And there's also a Q&A tab over in the top right. So if some questions come up as Jeff is presenting, feel free to jot them there. And then in the last 5 minutes, I'll knock them out. So with that, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Josh. Let's get sharing going, and hopefully the technology will cooperate. And we can get rolling. So again, my name is Jeff Lash. I lead the product management research area at Forrester. I basically spend most of my day every day talking with product management leaders and their teams, helping them improve their performance. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today is some research that we did looking at kind of the evolving product management function and how product management is changing. So you can see here, I've got a copy of these slides available for download. That's the most common question that I normally get asked, so I figured I would just put that up front. So if I go through some things too quickly, or if you just want your own copy, you can go there, and I'll keep that URL afterwards. And also, I'm on Twitter, so if you want to live tweet as well, happy to do that. Usually when I do these in person, I like pose with the slides and let people take pictures and post those, but you'll just have to get maybe a screenshot if you'd like. So before I get into product management, I just want to tell you a little story about something I remember from my childhood. Back in my day, back when many of us were probably kids, we did not have Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime Video or anything like that, right? We had, a couple cable channels if we were lucky, and a whole bunch of VHS tapes. So one of my sister's favorite movies was Mary Poppins. I was not a huge fan of Mary Poppins, but one of the parts I really liked was, if you remember at the beginning, Dick Van Dyke, who played Bert the chimney sweep, has this scene where he's in a park and he's playing all these different instruments, right? The one-man band, and he's got the bass drum on his back, and he's got the cymbals and trumpet and things like that. And I was actually a drummer when I was a kid. I still play a little bit, and so I always thought this was really fun and cool and amusing. And this metaphor has stuck with me over the years, because I feel like in many cases this is a good metaphor for product management, right? We are trying to play all the different instruments at once and trying to do a little of everything. And I think there's many situations where you can have the one person, one-man band, one-person band approach to product management. That's what most of it have done. But more and more, we're seeing that there is stratification within the product management function. If you look at what's happening in marketing, right? We don't just have marketers, we have demand marketers and channel marketers and product marketers. In sales, we don't just have salespeople, we have sales operations and sales enablement and channel sales. And in development, we don't just have developers, we have engineers and architects and DevOps and infrastructure and all these other things, right? But in product management, we have product managers. So what I'm going to dive in today is really, what are we starting to see as we look at organizations, the different types of product management that's emerging, and the different roles, and what's different about them, and hopefully give you some guidance on what might work well for your organization. So there's a couple things that are changing. I think the first thing that's driving this change is that we're seeing more types of products be created. It used to be that a product was something that was created and sold to a customer for money, and that certainly still is the case, but we're also seeing that product management principles are being applied to lots of different types of products, not just the things that we sell for money, and I'll show some examples of those in a few minutes. We also, I think, are moving to much more complex products. It used to be we had simple self-contained products where one person could do it all, and now when you have platforms and solutions and integrated offerings, right, there's just a lot more complexity. And so when products are more multifaceted, it sometimes takes different skills and more people. The technology that we're using to build products, particularly digital products, is changing. It used to be that, in the early 2000s, if you knew, databases and HTML, like you knew all of the technology that existed. Right now, there's so many different types of technologies that are used for so many different products. Not that we need to be experts in any, in all technologies, but at least have awareness of what's possible and the technologies that are used for building our products. We're also in a situation where we're starting to have purpose-built tools. So rather than managing everything through spreadsheets and PowerPoints and Word documents, I mean, still a lot of people do that, but we're starting to see purpose-built product management tools that allow us to manage roadmaps better and manage requirements better and manage our agile sprints. And we're seeing more and more product managers start to adopt those, and therefore those tools need setup and need support and need ongoing maintenance to be able to get the value out of them. And fundamentally, we're just seeing that product portfolios are getting more complicated, right? You have more people in the product management function, and many people are now coming to product management rather than just kind of falling into it. Again, back in my day, you didn't go to school to become a product manager. You kind of found it somewhere along the way. Well, now there are undergraduates or people who are going to college and saying, I want to be a product manager. That's great, but we have a lot of people that don't necessarily have limited or maybe inconsistent experience. And so there's a need to establish more consistency and clarity within the role of product management. So these are all these forces that are kind of driving some of these changes, and why this is really, I think, a good point to have this conversation. We have a number of different models we use with our clients to help them improve their performance and improve their efficiency of product management. One of the ones we use is called our range of responsibilities, where we outline the 5 areas of responsibility that product management has as a function. So the function of product management, we believe, should be responsible for identifying market opportunities, looking at customer needs and competitive intelligence to identify where are their commercial opportunities, defining different possible solutions and figuring out what the right product is, coming up with a strategy and a plan and a roadmap and a business case, getting that approved and working to actually on the engineering to actually deliver it. And then once it's in the market, how do we grow and continue growth and manage it as part of a portfolio? And obviously this cycle kind of continues. So traditionally, when we think about that one-person band, the one-man band, one product manager would do all of this for every product. So I'm doing all these for a product, someone else is doing all these for another product, and that model still exists and still makes a lot of sense. But more and more we're seeing, because of those forces that I just mentioned, it's not possible or practical for one person to do all of this, and so we start to see some stratification. And so, like a good analyst, we like to think in kind of X and Y grids of different dimensions. And so as we thought about this more, we realized there's really 2 dimensions of different types of products and product management subfunctions. The first is the orientation. So ultimately, every product is for an end user and customer. But in some cases, we're seeing that are products that exist to serve other products. They are data repositories, they are APIs, they are things that provide information to another product that then packages that information up and then supplies it to an actual human being. So we have the spectrum of product orientation. Are you focused on, and is your product focused on an end user or on serving another product that thereby serves the end user? Then we have this other dimension, the x-axis, of the audience focus. So traditionally, product management has been about our external customers, our clients, people outside the organization. But we're also seeing that there are products that are used internally by employees or maybe by partners. And so there's also other functions that are focused on enabling people within the organization. So when we look at this combination of product orientation and audience focus, we get what we call this product management panorama. And you think about the word panorama, right? It's a wide view across a wide landscape. And so what I'm going to do is go through the different boxes that make up this panorama and each of the different roles or sub-functions within product management. And by the end of this, you'll see how it all kind of fits together. Now, I'll just say, before I get into the specific roles, most organizations are not going to have all these different roles or sub-functions, and that's okay. This is a small company, small number of products, small number of product managers. You might only have 1 or 2 of these boxes. Even the very large clients we work with don't necessarily have all these roles and sub-functions. The purpose of this is to help you understand the different types of product management and the different roles that may be needed and may be appropriate in certain situations. So let's start with what we call product management for an offering. This is the traditional, traditionally what we think of when we think of product managers, someone who is responsible for the overall commercial success of a market-facing revenue-generating product. We like to, you might have heard the metaphor, like the CEO of the product. We like to use the metaphor of a conductor of an orchestra, right? Your job as a product manager is to get all these different musicians from different areas playing together in harmony, playing together off the same piece of music to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts. So rather than being the one-man band, one-person band who has to do it all themselves, working with development and design and marketing and sales and finance and getting everyone to work together towards this shared goal. So for the product management for an offering, right, it's responsible for these types of customer-facing, standalone kind of products that can be sold and generate revenue in their own sense. It can be software, it can be hardware, it can be service, it can be B2B, B2C. There, I think you can probably think of lots of different examples. For each of these roles, I'm going to go back to that range of responsibilities. Now, all 5 of those responsibilities are important for all types of product management. None of those can be avoided. However, we do see that in some cases, some are going to be more, there needs to be more emphasis on some than others. So for example, here, what we find is that product delivery actually gets the bulk of attention, which is not necessarily a good thing. I hear from product leaders all the time where they say, my product managers spend a ton of time with engineering, with development. They don't spend enough time doing customer research or competitive intelligence or working with marketing or working on the product roadmap, right? They're just focused on kind of getting the next features and user stories built out. So because product delivery gets a disproportionate amount of attention, a lot of times the work we're doing, and I'm doing, is to really help enable product managers to spend more time doing opportunity identification and product definition if they're in these offering type roles. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one because I think you probably pretty much know what this one is, because this is our classical definition of product management. But as we start looking at the other types of product management that serve end users, we get to what we call product management for value add. Now, we would define a value add as a product that's used by external customers, but doesn't generate revenue explicitly. So it's not something you pay for, it's something you get as because you're a customer, right? It's a value add. So when I go to a retailer and I connect to their Wi-Fi network, that Wi-Fi network is a product, right? When I use their mobile app, that is a product. I'm not paying for those things explicitly, but they are provided to me as a customer to add value. It also can be if you're a distributor. We have some clients that are just distributors of other manufacturers' equipment. Well, they have a lot of value-added products they're creating because they're trying to convince their customers to buy from the distributor rather than buying from someone else. So they can create value-added products that help them track their warranties, track service, and things like that. So this is where we're seeing a lot of activity, particularly in organizations that are going through digital transformation, right? Where they're trying to add kind of add value in a commoditized business, or whether they are just adjusting their business model to try to move more towards services and recurring revenue rather than just one-time sales. So if you're in product management for this type of product, I think the first thing is to realize, like, this is a little bit different, right? You're not going to be worrying about pricing and packaging because you're not charging for your product, but you do need to think about what is the value that I create. And this is probably the biggest challenge I hear from folks who are leading teams in this area, is that they're creating this stuff, they're creating mobile apps and websites and portals and things like that, but they don't often think about what is the value this is creating and how do we measure and add value. So it's not that opportunity identification is unimportant, because it is important, but the reality is usually that opportunity has already been established, and what we need to focus on is, right, how do we define the right way of addressing customer needs and continuing to make sure we have a solid product strategy and vision as we go forward. Then we get to internal. So if we move on this axis more towards the internal, this is where things start to get a little interesting. We hear a lot from CIOs and technology organizations that they're moving away from a project focus to a product focus. So if you've been in businesses or IT for some time, you probably remember how things used to work, right? Someone in the business somewhere, like in HR, they walk over to IT and they say, hey, we need a new system to track our employee information and to track onboarding of employees. And IT would say, great, like, let's gather requirements, let's go build it. We'll go off in the corner for a couple of months and we'll deliver it to you, and then we'll wipe our hands and walk away, right? It was a very project mentality. And we're seeing more and more IT organizations are going away from that and moving towards more of a product management mentality, where they're actually managing those products and managing the whole life cycle of it. And also looking at, rather than just building a new product, what is the need you're trying to solve? And do we already have something in our portfolio that can solve that? So this could be products that they're building internally custom, or it could be third-party products that are being licensed, or SaaS products that are being customized and used. And we're seeing more and more organizations, maybe they don't call it product management, but they have people that are in these roles. And I think the biggest need and opportunity we see here is in the growth and portfolio management space, because when you move from a project focus, you're so focused on just delivering, and then moving on to the next project. A lot of times these organizations have dozens or hundreds or thousands of products that have been acquired or developed over the years, and they don't really have their arms around what needs to be done. So this is an area that we see as really important for these internal product management functions to really understand and get their arms around the portfolio and make sure that there's optimization, there's rationalization, and that resources are being put towards things that will really add value to the business. So that's that top layer of products that are actually directly used by audiences, by any of these audiences. We're going to go down a level and talk about what we call product management of a component. And you can think of a component as just part of one of those products, as part of an offering, as part of a value add, or as part of an internal product. So a component is something that cannot exist on its own, right? It's the toolbox in a photo editing software, right, where I pick my different brushes and things like that. Or it's the search that's part of a product that provides search document retrieval. Or if we sell a piece of CT equipment to a hospital and there's software that goes along with it, we can't sell the software without the equipment. They go together. Generally, I think that the idea historically has been that it's probably not good to organize around components because we want people organized around kind of customer problems, not necessarily technology components. But I think the reality is in some products they're too big and complex to be managed by one person alone. And I think also we recommend if you're organizing your team around components, those components shouldn't be around technologies, they should be around customer problems or use cases. So for example, rather than saying that this is the product manager responsible for the search results page, maybe you have a product manager who's responsible for finding information. So anything within the product that relates to finding information, whether it's search or browse or chat bot or whatever that is, right? That product manager is responsible for that problem in the context of the bigger problem that the product solves. And these products really can't exist on their own, so there needs to be a tight connection and interlock between whoever is responsible for the components and the offerings now, or the value add. So you can have each component of the product managed by a different person, or you could have a product manager who's managing the overall product and just one person focusing on only one component because you just need some extra help and some extra subject matter expertise there, for example. If we move down the stack in terms of kind of orientation, we get to technical product management. And this is a role that we're seeing in more and more organizations. Although I'll say in many cases, we're seeing it being applied maybe not as it should be or not as it could be leveraged completely. You might think of the technical product manager as similar to a product owner in a Scrum sense. And I think that's a good place to start with, but just ideally the product owner in a Scrum sense also should be responsible for kind of the customer value and things like that, not just working with the development team. Where we see technical product management as being really useful is when there's specific subject matter expertise needed, when there's a lot of development work required to accomplish kind of some very straightforward product customer requirements, or where it's very difficult to interact regularly with engineering. So you have an outsourced offshore distributed development team. So for example, if you're a product manager managing a router, and we know that the router, customers have told us that the router needs to do a better job operating with higher bandwidth speeds and lower packet loss, right? That's a requirement. It might take months and months and months and months for the development team to actually make that happen, right? That's where a technical product manager could work with the development team directly on that versus someone else could be focused more on, well, what are other needs that customers need to be solved? So the technical product manager should be working to make sure that the market and product requirements are reflected and implemented in that finished product, and working very closely with the product manager who's responsible for the offering or the value add, or in some cases, the internal product. And then the lowest layer here, again, not in terms of importance, but just in terms of orientation, is platform product management. And we're seeing, again, lots of organizations are starting to have platforms either that are used to build products internally or to third parties. So the way we define a platform is it's any system that allows for us for the creation and use of other offerings by providing some sort of infrastructure. So if we are a company that manufactures copiers, right, we might want to make sure that all of our copiers allow you to put a document on the glass and scan it and create a PDF and email it to someone. Well, we don't need every product manager for every different copier creating their own software, right? We should have a platform and consistency of that, right? So that's an example of a platform. Even if the copiers aren't actually built on that, it's a shared component that is being managed and provided to those products that are then being provided to end users. Sometimes the platform is created first and products are built off of that. Sometimes products are created and then components are pulled out of that to create a platform. I'll note here that this is similar to product management in many ways, in that there's we still need to understand customer needs and have a roadmap and things like that. It's not a technical management of the platform, right? There's still technical engineering management needed in terms of what technologies the platform built on and managing the development teams. This is really about the business management of the platform as a product. And so that's why you see a focus on the product strategy and planning and the delivery and the portfolio management as part of that ongoing lifecycle management. Now you notice there was a little bit of white space on the end. So there's two more emerging roles or functions, sub-functions I'm going to talk about. The first is product operations. This has been getting a lot more attention the past year or two. What we find is that there's still a very, very inconsistent definition of what product operations actually is. So if you talk to 10 companies that have product operations roles or functions, you'll probably find 10 different definitions. We are seeing a little bit of overlap, but the way we think about it is that really product operations is focused on the products, right? Focused on how can we make those products operate more efficiently, effectively, and how can we give product managers information so they can make decisions to help the products operate more efficiently and effectively. So some of the responsibilities that are probably most common include just the overall running of the products and how do we improve their operations. Usually data and reporting is a big part of this, because again, it's about capturing how the products are being used or how they're running and providing that information to the PMs to make better decisions. And as well as the management of some of these new specialized tools and technologies. And if you look at other ops functions in other areas of the business, if you look at marketing ops or sales ops or dev ops or design ops, usually that's the group that's responsible for the specific technologies that function uses. And as we see more of these purpose-built technologies designed for use by product managers, that's there's work needs to be done to evaluate them, to acquire them, to set them up correctly, to enable people internally to use them and to manage them, to make sure they're providing that operational assistance. The last function I'll talk about is product management excellence. And in some cases, we see this being merged a bit with product operations, but we really think this is a distinct and unique role. And we're seeing actually organizations that are starting to set this up as a distinct function and actually using the title product management excellence. And it's really about enabling. It's about enabling the people. It's about enabling the rest of the product management organization to be effective. If you're familiar with on the sales side, you see sales enablement functions in many organizations. It's very similar in many respects. This is a group that's responsible for making sure that product managers have the knowledge, the skills, and the processes to be successful. So do they, have the right information that they need to do their jobs? Do they have the skills to be able to perform what's expected of them? And do they have the processes for doing customer research, for doing pricing, for managing the product lifecycle? And you can see here from some of the data we've collected through our research that part of the reason why we think this is such an important function is that organizations that are highly successful are more likely to have regular upskilling. They're more likely to have a defined product lifecycle process. They're more likely to have these knowledge and skills and processes in place. So think of this product management excellence as almost like a force multiplier. If you can enable your product managers to do their jobs better, then the whole company succeeds and the product function can succeed as well. And product management excellence is really the role that can help kind of light the fire and make that happen. And then, of course, across the top, we have the role of product leadership. So there's someone at the VP, or increasingly we're seeing the CPO level, that's responsible for all of these different roles and sub-functions. The one caveat I'll say is that oftentimes the internal product management is part of a separate group that may report, for example, up to a CIO. But conceptually, I think we want to think about that internal product management as a product management function. It's just the products they're managing are a little more internal focused, but the principles, practices, skills, competencies, and things, there's a lot of overlap. So that was a quick tour through this emerging product management landscape. I'm hoping that you're able to look at this and understand where your organization is at, what you're doing well, maybe what some of the challenges you have are, and as you look at some of these roles, understanding which of these roles might be needed. Maybe you're doing some of these things today and you're just not calling it that, but what are the opportunities maybe to stratify your product management function so you're not the one-man band, one person orchestra like that, but starting to realize we actually need a chorus of different instruments, of different roles to actually make product management successful. So I wanted to leave a few minutes at the end for some questions. I haven't been able to monitor chat and Q&A, but maybe Josh can help me out and see if there's any questions that came in along the way.
Yes, there have been some great questions, both in chat and the Q&A. Why don't we just start off with one of them in Q&A from Rusty. He says, I've had product managers that spend an inordinate amount of time setting up part numbers and bombs in Oracle/SAP. Where do you typically see that function sit? And also, thank you for the presentation. Great presentation. And looking forward to these questions.
So I would say that that falls under kind of a whole bunch of operational setup, right? So we do all the work to understand customer needs, figure out what the right capabilities are, work to get it built, and then we actually need to sell the product, right? There's a whole bunch of we sometimes call it release readiness, all that other stuff that needs to happen. So in some cases that is product management, but if you're saying that product managers are spending an inordinate amount of time there, what I would argue is that could that work be offloaded, right? Are there? I think about it very practically, right? If I have an hour of time, a free hour on someone's calendar, what do we want that person doing? Do we want that person entering part numbers into a database, or do we want them doing a customer interview, or do we want them coordinating with marketing and sales? Do we want them, understanding why they won certain deals or not? So if you're finding that you're using very highly skilled, highly specialized, sometimes fairly expensive resources to do things that could be offloaded to other functions, my argument would be then you should probably offload those things to other functions. So there's usually some level of release readiness and operational setup that product management is required to do. But if they're spending a lot of time on that, my suspicion is that that's a responsibility that is probably best handled by other functions. And that range of responsibilities model that I shared earlier is actually one of the ways we do that. Sometimes I show that to people and I say, hey, what are your product managers are doing that are not on this page? And let's have a discussion about should they be doing that or not. So that might be a good way to start.
Cool. Thank you. Another question that came up earlier on in the chat was about retirement of product. And there's a lot of focus in launching new and developing new products, but how do you frame product retirement in the product manager's job and responsibilities? Yeah.
So it's a good observation, and I think a really important one, because I think there is a lot of focus generally on, hey, I joke, we get to launch, we have the pizza party, then we move on to the next thing. But if you go back to that definition I shared, we view the role of the product manager is to be responsible for the overall commercial success of the product throughout its life cycle. Meaning at some point saying, look, this product should not be part of the portfolio anymore. So it fits under that growth and portfolio management aspect, and absolutely it's part of the responsibility of a product manager to say, hey, we think we should enhance this product, we think we should maintain it, or we think it's a candidate for sunsetting or migration to another product. And I think it's one of those things that oftentimes just doesn't get as much attention as it deserves, because it's not the fun work that most of people sign up for. Like everyone raises their hand and says, yeah, I want to innovate, create something new. Not a lot of people raise their hand and say, yeah, I love ending product lines. But the reality is there's a lot of money and resources that are wasted on products that shouldn't still be in the market. And if you can do a good job at that and successfully sunset products, it allows you to free up resources to put into things that can drive innovation.
Awesome. Another question to squeak in that's definitely on my agenda with looking at physical products is from Josh Ide. He was asking for some examples of where that's worked well, and he was specifically talking about the physical or the hardware in product applications as opposed to just software.
Yeah. So we've used this model. We work with I work with clients of all different types of products, whether they are electronic digital products or actual intangible services, as well as physical products, where we're seeing this. I mean, obviously some of this stuff is going to be a little bit more designed for digital, but I'll give you one example. The offering, more and more we're seeing that physical products are not just completely disconnected from the digital world, right? So we're seeing this whole emergence of hybrid products, right? I've got a vacuum cleaner that I can control with an iPhone app, right? So the offering is the vacuum cleaner plus the app, right? That's part of the value proposition. So you might have one person who's responsible for the vacuum component and someone who's responsible for the digital iPhone component of that. So again, you might look at this and say, we don't have a platform, we don't have technical product management. That's fine, but I would guess even for those physical environments that it's very rare. I think it's becoming more rare that we have products that are completely manufactured with no sort of digital connection at all, or even then, right? The product might not have a digital component, but the company is providing some value-added services on top of that.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, we've hit our 4 o'clock, and you've really made this a productive use of a half an hour. So thank you, and everyone, do remember Jeff's blog, goodproductmanager.com. And yeah, thanks for coming, and thank you so much, Jeff. Really, really great, packed, informative presentation.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for your help, Josh, and thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your product camp.